And look at Randy Orton slithering.
Oh, watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
KO! Here's the cover.
Hey, what's up guys? And we're here back today with a video, another kind of review, guess, on another one of the new tanks that just came out. That was a butchered intro, but here we are, and we're going to jump into it anyways. So, judging by the title and why you clicked here, we're looking at the Senlac that came out, aka Becky Lynch, but we're going to call it the Senlac because, yeah. So, obviously, I'm going to like this tank. It's the Scout. Surprise, surprise. We all know that by now, at least if you're not new here. But what are you getting with this thing? Well, it's a UK premium, UK Tier 8 light premium tank. So it's fairly helpful, I guess, if you're grinding crews for the new British, they've been out a month or so now, British light tank line that came out in early July, I think it was, something like that. But this thing is pretty much the polar opposite of the UK light tanks. In terms of, if you look at the shell count on the bottom of the screen, it has a ton of ammo. Even with the ammo buffs that we got versus the PC version, this thing has basically infinite ammo. You're never going to run out of this thing. If you do, I'll be impressed. Yeah. But another thing to go with that, though, is this thing is quite large compared to the British light tanks and the tech tree versions. It's similar in setup, this thing is, in terms it has the rear-mounted turret that most of the tech tree ones do. However, this thing does not have the camo that those tanks do at all. So, in comparison, something like the... this thing has .26 concealment, which is slightly worse than, say, the LTTB, which has .27, and then much worse than many of the other UK lights that have like .34 and up, generally speaking. So, such as like the LHMTV at Tier 8 as well. So, a bit of a trade-off for camo, and instead you get a gun that has ammo, more ammo, I guess, and also a gun that has some DPM to it, actually. Now, what is this gun's alpha? It has 180 alpha, which is good. It's pretty standard. It's the same as the LTTB at the steer. Single shot, obviously, looking at it. There's something quite unique about it, but we'll jump into that in a bit if you haven't already played this tank, as we're going to introduce this Tiger 2 to the mighty alpha damage here. Our first shot hits his ammo rack, and then second one, as we look for it, yeah, oof, sir, oof. Yeah, that is not the normal alpha, by the way, obviously. It'd be amazing if it was, but it'd be quite OP. But, yeah, the rate of fire on this gun is slightly worse than the LTTB. I'm going to compare it a lot because they're both 180 alpha Tier 8 tanks, just for gun purposes, I guess, gun handling and such like that. Performance of this 20-pounder that you have on this little vehicle. So the rate of fire is about 10.91 rounds a minute, which is actually semi-decent. It's slightly worse. I think the LTTB's is 11.11. I should know that by now, considering how many games I have in that tank, but I'm pretty sure it's around that ballpark. So slightly worse than something like that, but much better DPM than the Tech Tree Tier 8, the LHMTV. At least I believe so, and it definitely should. So, thing is, this thing, it's a weird playstyle, honestly, for me, because it doesn't really scout too well, at least do the passive scout thing, because the camo is quite lackluster for a Tier 8 scout. It's probably one of the worst, to be fair, but the gun is good, so it's probably more of a harassing kind of scout tank. You can obviously still scout stuff in this thing. Maps are going to work out that way, but it's a slightly just more reliant on dishing out the damage in this thing rather than the actual getting the spotting damage, though it does have good range at 400 meters, which is solid for a Tier 8 light tank as well, to keep that in mind. So it can do it. I have had a couple good games. Still a light tank, so you can get away with it, but just kind of bear in mind that, as Artie just wants to kill me, that it's not going to be like Vanguard or LHMTV Manticore type levels of camo and stealth when you're playing this thing, so kind of keep that in mind. And as I get more games in this, I'll probably get a better idea of how to actually play this. I don't want to say how to play it right now because I don't have that many games in it. I've only just started playing it this week, so I don't want to sit here and say, yep, this is how you play this tank. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to preach to you. But get more into the stats of this gun. It's at 180 alpha, just shy of 11 rounds a minute base. AP rounds come to 189, which is pretty good. And then we're going to see a very unique feature right here. As just skip over the APCR for a bit. The HE rounds on this thing are actually grenades, which is very strange. And they actually have way less alpha, as you can see, but the rate of fire is very, very, very good. They actually take the reload from 5 seconds or so on the AP and APCR down to just over a second, and that will improve depending on how good your crew is. So my Manticore crew is 1.13 seconds on the reload on that, but my other crews are 1.3. So varying levels of reload speed there as your crew gets better and better and better. So those HE rounds are kind of unique in the fact that, yes, they have a shorter reload and a faster reload, I guess. Same thing. But they have only 50 millimeters of pen, and then they have 80 damage. So they're quite a unique round in terms of increasing your rate of fire, but just significantly decreasing your alpha damage. So kind of keep that in mind. I wouldn't use them too much. I'm just experimenting with them a lot in this first week playing the tank. And honestly, they're not that reliable. They can even struggle penning artillery and stuff like that because of how low damage they do. They will sometimes not even do splash damage. They'll just not pen because of how 80 damage is not much at all. But if you can find something that is squishy, super squishy, say like an SU-130 PM, that there's 2 of them on their team. Some arties you can get away with it with. I don't really use it against a lot of light tanks, generally speaking. I wouldn't recommend it. I've been experimenting with it, so even this game you're going to see me fire it at some other scouts. But I don't really recommend it on a regular basis to fire these HE rounds, or grenades as they're really called, I guess. But they're fun. They're funny to play with. I will admit they are for a good laugh, especially if you come across something like an SU-130 or a Borsig or a Waffle E100 even. That would be hilarious, just to sit there and chuck 80 alpha shells into them repeatedly. But their actual usability is kind of low. I don't really recommend using that many of them. But they're there for a good laugh. So, and we'll just jump right back to the APCR rounds that you see I have on this tank as well. And they have 223 millimeters of pen, which is good for a tier 8 scout, especially for APCR. I definitely prefer having the APCR rounds to, say, heat rounds. Heat rounds on a scout just aren't my thing. I'd much rather have the ability to fire on the move tanks on the side and not have to worry about tracks and stuff like that. So definitely prefer the APCR on this tank, and they're pretty good. Again, I think the AP rounds have 1,000 meters per second, and then the APCR has 1,200, which is solid. And yeah, overall the gun I'm pretty happy with, to be fair. It's got some other normal scout stuff. The aim time's pretty quick on it as well, 1.8 seconds, which is decent. Which is actually, that's not decent, that's really good. The accuracy is 0.38, but most light tanks, the most accurate light tank I've ever played is 0.35. So I mean, that's what you're going to get with scouts. The accuracy is very mediocre. Don't always understand that, but that's just the case. So kind of keep that in mind. It's not the most nimble tank. I said it's a weird play style. It's really hard to describe. Like I said, I don't want to say how to play it. You can't really active scout in it because it's not super nimble. It's not super quick. It's kind of just there. It's like a secondary support vehicle almost. It's a very strange kind of play style with this. Unlike something like the LT-432 on their team, you can't just hover around in your Russian hovercraft and go flying around the map doing active scouting. You can't. It's harder to do, I should say. But So far, I've been enjoying the thing. Overall, I would rate it probably as a good tank. I wouldn't call it great. It's definitely not on the level of like the Hawk 30 or something like that. But it's definitely a much better tank than, especially compared to other scouts, premium scouts, the HMH 58, something like that. That's not that great in terms of gun handling, pen, and all that kind of stuff. So, kind of middle of the pack tank. That's what you're going to get. It's a free tank that you can get. I think you got to buy the battle pass to have this one unlocked though. So kind of keep that in mind if you are going or you want this vehicle. That you kind of had to do that as well, which is like 2,000 gold. I don't know. I don't remember. It wasn't a big deal for myself, but I know for some people that can be an issue. So keep that in mind. And yeah, so far this game has been pretty boring. Honestly, on Fisherman's Bay, we're just kind of searching for any kind of damage to do. Again, I can't really be super aggressive in this thing. At least on my level of aggression, I guess. But we're just trying to get for the pot shots. I like the 180 Alpha, to be fair. It's more punchy for a light tank at this tier. You can definitely feel the difference. Getting rolls over 200 damage every, what is it, the reload on this is about 4 seconds. G92 comes in. Again, this thing is not meant for dogfighting because the traverse speed on this thing is not fantastic for a scout. I always feel like I'm just in a boat. As you can see now, we're loading up the grenades again, just for a good laugh. The T92 is giving his rear, so I'm happily going to do this. And now I'm just trying to free aim it in front of him. He hits me again. I hit him, miss a few, miss a few, miss a few. He hits a rock, we hit him again, and then we finish him off. So, an okay situation there for this thing with HE. But again, I don't recommend just firing it every time you see another light tank. Something like that Sheridan that went by. You'd really struggle to pen or do anything to him just because of his space armor. So I'd really recommend not doing that. But I'm thoroughly enjoying this thing, to be fair. Again, that's not saying much because you could probably put freaking goat cart out there with a Nerf gun and I would probably still like it and call it a light tank and I would probably drive it. But yeah, for the average player, the scout, this isn't a bad tank to maybe learn light tank play in. It's not the worst. But there's probably some better ones too. Like I said, Hawk 30 is much more of a dominant vehicle at tier 8. And I definitely recommend that if you're looking for something. But if you don't mind paying out, I guess, the money for the battle pass and getting Andre the Giant and AMX M4 thing that I'll probably never play, this is the probably second best vehicle coming out of this event, I would say. Again, I'm a little biased just because Mr. Scout Tank, I guess. But after the Stone Cold, this is probably my second favorite tank. The other two, I'm just not. I haven't played the Undertaker yet. Nothing about it screams, yeah, I want to play this thing. Even though I've yet to play a game in it. And the AMX M4 is an AMX M4, and the tech tree variant of that thing needs a buff, so I'm not really in any rush to play that thing more than I already have, which is very little. Personally, I haven't touched it outside of one game on stream, and that game was not very enjoyable to myself. But this thing has been kind of a treat to play. Again, it's nice to have a light tank, British light tank to grind crews in. That is a plus. I will say the XP stuff and multipliers on this thing are about 10% for the XP, and then I think the silver is 50%, so you're not going to be racking in the silver, as that's a disgusting shot. But I'm not really playing tier 8 Prem light tanks to make silver, personally, myself. And if you are, I'd recommend probably not doing that. Just because the tier 8 Prem lights aren't always, they're not the best at making silver, to be fair. At least playing them effectively, I guess. So I'd recommend looking at some of the mediums instead. So that's just me personally. If I'm looking for a silver grinder, it's something like Scorpion G or something else for silver. This is probably not the best bet, personally speaking. Now, do I think what of my equipment loadout on this thing? I guess I should cover that as well. I'm running the standard stuff of gun rammer, optics, and vert sabs. My go-to test it and true setup for scouts, because again, I don't do the whole passive scouting thing, and this thing really wouldn't be great for passive scouting. Again, just because the camo is not really there to do it, so it's probably better to just complement the gun a little bit. As you see, we're just finishing up this game. Neither of these games were the best results. Still solid games nonetheless. Definitely happy with these games, but more just to showcase what this tank is possibly capable of. And I definitely think this thing you will see on the channel in the future with some pretty ridiculous results. At least I think so. Just because of the amount of ammo capacity it has. It's just bound to happen to have a ridiculous result in this thing, because you can take a lot of chancy shots in it because you have so much ammo that you can maybe take a couple shots normally that you wouldn't in other tanks, especially the British tech tree lights, that you're going, do I really want to waste a round on that shot? It's really slim. Instead, this thing I can just fire away and not feel any kind of remorse about it, saying, oh man, I wasted one of 170 rounds. Like, whew, oh yeah, I'm really heartbroken over that. But this thing's a solid vehicle, definitely I think worth the effort to get, especially if you like scouts and looking for a UK light tank prem to kind of focus your crews on. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Probably back to regular replays this weekend sometime, and I will catch you then. See ya, and peace.